Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Lady Luck here again with another true crime story. We're going to be talking about little Josefina Catherine Cunningham, little 3-year old girl who was taken too soon, was murdered by a man named Robert Fisher after brutally awarding saying the little girl and then took her life. We're going to get to the story. First, want to show a video of updated news of the convicted murderer dying in prison. And then we're going to go over some background information on little Josefina and then check out the sentencing order for Robert Fisher to show that justice was served. Personally, I think he should have been given the death penalty, but he was definitely sentenced to prison and has now been discovered or reported that he died in prison. So before we get to the true crime story, make sure you guys please hit the like button and consider becoming a subscriber and a member of the Lady Luck Club. I am trying to aim for the goal of hitting 50,000 subscribers by July 31st. Do believe that it's very possible, and it is by the support of all of you that would make that possible. Hitting the like button is free to do. Consider becoming a member for exclusive content, as well as court filings and lawsuit complaints that are hard to find on the internet that I am making available to the members of the LLC, as well as sharing the content. These true crime stories are meant to keep the memory and the name of these victims alive. They're no longer with us, but we should not forget them. And 3-year old Josephina Cunningham had an entire life ahead of her, and that life was taken by a completely evil, soulless, and heinous individual over a crime very brutal. So, we're going to check out this video. It's only a couple minutes long, and then we're going to get to the background and the sentencing order. The purpose of this is to not only keep the victim's name alive and the memory of the victim alive, but to show that justice was served. So, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Let's get to it.
Brand new at 5, Rensselaer police say they are not surprised that Robert Fisher died at the Elmira Correctional Facility this week.
That breaking update was first on 13 last night. Fisher only spent a few weeks behind bars after he was just convicted of murdering and raping little Josefina Cunningham. She was just 3 years old.
News Channel 13's
Wow.
Tessa Ventulin is now here live with us to share what police told her today. Tessa.
Hi, Rachel and Steve. Well, the Rensselaer police chief says they were informed about Fisher's death, but they're in the dark when it comes to how Fisher died. That's being investigated by the Department of Corrections and Community Services. Police Chief Warren Famigletti says it's a difficult situation for everybody involved because of the trauma this horrific death has for the family and the investigators who worked closely on this case. Hearing about Fisher's death brings that trauma back for so many. Fisher's death comes 6 weeks after he was just sentenced to 20 years to life in prison
Wow.
for Josefina Cunningham's death. He pled guilty to raping and killing little Josefina here on your screen in Rensselaer in July 2023. The details of Josefina's attack are horrific. In court, we learned Fisher drugged Josefina before raping her, then tried to cover it up, and what he'd done by taking Clorox wipes and scrubbing her face. He scrubbed her face so hard that he burned the pigment right off her face. Chief Famigletti says to make sure he wants to make sure everyone knows of the
And this is the reason why we go over these stories, is to make sure that she would have been 5 years old. This was 2 years ago when he took her life in July of 2023. Today is July 6, 2025. She would have been 5 years old, probably starting kindergarten in August or September of this year for school. And he did not have the right to do any of those things to her. So, this is why we talk about these true crime stories. It's because a little girl lost her life over an evil, soulless miscreant from hell.
Terrible things Fisher did to Josefina.
Did you expect this death to come?
We didn't not expect it, right? It's a horrific
That's a
crime.
good
Everybody
answer.
knows what he did. So we didn't expect him to have a smooth time in prison.
Because you never do.
Coming up live at 6 o'clock, the conversation.
So that's pretty much the end of that. And I apologize for the video. Seems like it's skipping a little bit, but I do want to get over to the background information. Um, this is on the Black Media Authority website. It says New York man seeks justice for sister three who was R-word murdered. This is Josefina Catherine Cunningham. She was adorable little baby. It says here Josefina Catherine Cunningham was only 3 years old when her life was wrongfully taken. Remembered for her vibrant spirit and sweet demeanor, the story of how her precious life was cut short is being told by her older brother, Jaquan Stewart. Josefina was found dead on July 7, 2023, which would be tomorrow, 2 years since her death, in her mother's apartment in Rensselaer, New York. Rensselaer, New York, after being strangled, beaten, and R-word by her mother's boyfriend, 34-year-old Robert Fisher. Stewart recalled seeing Josefina earlier in the evening on the night of the tragic event. I went to my mom's house to get my keys. I left, and then my mom did as well. The 22-year-old said Josefina was left in the care of Robert. When my mom came home, Josefina was sound asleep and breathing. Stewart noted that his mother went to bed following her check on Josefina, and it wasn't until the next morning that she and the rest of their family would find the toddler bruised and unresponsive. While commuting to work, she received a call from his aunt about his little sister's death. I was on my way to work and I got a call from my aunt. She told me, "Do you know that Josie died?" And then I took a lift over to my mother's house and I saw yellow tape outside, police standing in front of the house, he said. That morning, as Josefina's family mourned her death, her killer tried to clean up his mess. Stewart recalled Fisher sweeping, mopping, and using excessive amounts of bleach in an attempt to clear any evidence of the horrific acts he committed. Fisher was arrested that day and has been in police custody under protective care for the last year. On July 27th of this year, he pleaded guilty to his crimes and is now due to be sentenced on September 10th. Stewart noted that there's been talk of sentencing Fisher to a bid of 20 years to life. However, he feels that isn't severe enough of a punishment for the crime he committed, to which it wasn't, and I wholeheartedly agree. He should have been given the death penalty and nothing less. He stated he needs to be sentenced to the death penalty. In 2007, they did away with the death penalty in the state of New York, but I want it to be reinstated. If it happens, I'm going to call it the Josie Act. Well done. Stewart explained that he's hoping to have the death penalty reinstated in New York, and if that were to happen, he would seek to reopen his sister's case to have Fisher sentenced to death. Naturally, he would want this for his little sister. She's 3 years old. She's innocent. You can see how small and little she was and how big and nasty Robert Fisher was. Man. And it goes to the idea that he was, he died in prison. I mean, this is the same, concept and the point that I've been making, even with R. Kelly, who received threats to his life in prison, and the, I guess, concern of other accused offenders that are spending years in prison. These are all too common. Depending on why you're there, what you're convicted of, you could be walking with a target on your back. So, as opposed to R. Kelly being released to the public, there are contingencies in place. You put them in a different part of the cell or you transfer them to a different facility. But the aspect of being threatened, it's all too common, and the rest of the prisoners don't care who you are. They don't care if you're a famous celebrity or if you're someone called Robert Fisher. Whether you're Robert Kelly or Robert Fisher, they don't care. All they know is what you did to a child, a person that was innocent and could not fight back. And this is so heinous, it's so disgusting and deplorable. I mean, you can find some of the most hardcore criminals in prison that, do some horrendous things, but when it comes to children or the elderly, it is almost like a code of just honor and ethics. Ironically speaking, on how that happens, right? But there's this code. You found guilty of doing something to kids or to women in a heinous way or to the elderly, you're a walking target in prison. So imagine now if we start some horrible precedent with our Robert Kelly being freed, what would have happened to the Robert Fishers? They would have wanted to be freed as well. That's why we don't do that. So you can see that the brother is thinking along the same lines of what I'm thinking. I just, we have to be realistic in this. He should have gotten the death penalty, but 20 years to life. I don't even want to hear someone who did something so heinous like this even having the remote chance of getting out. If he could not get the death penalty, they should have just went for life. That should have been the only plea deal, and that's it. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. But I understand how the brother feels. The young man refuses to let his little sister's story go untold, equating his actions to that of Mommy Till when she decided to have an open casket funeral for her son, Emmett Till, who was lynched at the age of 14 by several white men. I believe my sister's story can cause a great awakening and bring the country to its knees in prayer, Stewart wrote in an editorial earlier this year. With a plethora of news outlets having already reported on the tragic event, he's determined to spread this story across the nation and hopefully onto the desk of local politicians. I will not rest until I have achieved justice for Josie. He concluded in the editorial, this is just the beginning. As of September 10th, Robert Fisher was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 20 years, which is something no one wants to hear with a soul or a conscience. So this is something that it's understandable to say. I don't want this person to be able to get out of prison ever, and it's natural that the brother would want um the murderer to stay there for the rest of his life. That's not I mean, that's normal. Why would anyone want this monster out on the street? So it's only for that reason that anyone would advocate for the death penalty here in this situation. So what I have now is the sentencing guide. Once again, like I said, to show or the sentencing order to show that there was justice. Might not be the justice that we all want, but justice nonetheless. I think the ultimate justice was finding out that he died in prison. But it says here the state of New York Supreme Court, County of Rensselaer. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The people of the state of New York against Robert Fisher, date of birth 12/18/1989, defendant. And you see the IND, the index number 70419-23, index number 274552. Count one, grand jury of the county of Rensselaer and state of New York, by this indictment, hereby accuses the above defendant, Robert Fisher, of the crime of murder in the second degree, a class A one felony in violation of section 125.25 subdivision 3 of the penal law of the state of New York, committed as follows: The defendant, between 8 p.m. on the 6th of July 2023 and 7:20 a.m. on the 7th of July 23 at 1552 Broadway in the city of Rensselaer, county of Rensselaer, and state of New York, did acting either alone or with one or more persons. He commits or attempts to commit robbery, burglary, kidnapping, arson, R word in the first degree, criminal XA in the first degree, SA in the first degree, aggravated SA, escape in the first degree, or escape in the second degree, and in the course of and in furtherance of such crime or of immediate flight therefrom, he or another participant, if there be any, causes the death of a person other than one of the participants, to wit, at the aforementioned date, time, and place, the defendant did commit R word in the first degree of violation, in violation of section 130.35, subdivision 3 of the penal law of the state of New York, and in the course of and in furtherance of such crime, he caused the death of a person specifically. And you see the name of Josefina Cunningham and her DOB crossed out, who was not a participant. I'm going to switch over. So I'm going to switch over to the second page. Okay, this is the count 2 here. Count 2, the grand jury of the county of Rensselaer and state of New York, by this indictment hereby accuses the above defendant Robert Fisher of the crime of R word in the first degree, a class B violent felony, in violation of section 130.35, subdivision 3 of the penal law of the state of New York, committed as follows. And you see here it is signed. I think it's just adding, it's the second count and the first count are in conjunction, seems like, with each other, but almost just kind of reiterates the date and time that it occurred. The person was less than 11 years old. I mean, honestly, under 18 they're not old enough to consent. She was 3 years old. And so you have here the assistant district attorney, Antonia M. Edwards, of the Rensselaer County District Attorney in Troy, New York. And then, of course, the grand jury, 4 persons. So this is the order for the sentencing. And then, of course, he was sentenced to 20 years to life with the possibility of parole. Why? That was such a bad deal. But now that he has been found deceased in prison, I don't think it should be taken as, reliving the trauma. I mean, it's almost to be expected when you go to prison on certain charges, on certain crimes. You're going to get some attention from the other prisoners. I think this is kind of just an unspoken fact that we all know. So I just wanted to make sure that I covered Josefina Cunningham and her life, albeit short-lived. She definitely was loved, and it's even more amazing to hear her brother want to have so much change for her and to fight for her on her behalf. We just have to make sure that these stories don't remain the tragedy that it is, but the victim is always highlighted and kept at the forefront. And then, of course, let this be a learning lesson for all of us to be aware of who we have around our children and the people that we have in our lives. It is heartbreaking to see that this was someone that the mother entrusted, that lived in her home, that did this to a 3-year-old little girl. So rest in peace, little Josefina. And for her brother, continue to fight for her. You're on your way. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for watching. I know these true crime stories are a bit hard, especially when it's pertaining to children. But the reality is, you have evil, soulless miscreants from hell doing this to children. And so we cannot forget about those children. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. And until the next one, Lady Luck Club out. Deuces.